Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
There was a period of time in my life where alcohol was a social necessity. Friday and Saturday nights were a given. And because I worked in a sales role, I also had social opportunities nearly every other night of the week that involved the consumption of alcohol. Hangovers were a cost of doing business. Lazy Saturdays and Sundays were the norm. Skipped workouts and late night food binges were commonplace. But as I got deeper on my inner work journey, I realized I was no longer willing to pay these steep prices that were keeping me from embodying my version of a great man. Today, I rarely, if ever, drink. And that's a personal choice for me. I celebrate others who enjoy drinking and can do so responsibly. So, this episode is for you if you don't currently have a drinking problem, but want to get a better idea of whether your current alcohol consumption patterns are impacting your ability to be your best self. This episode is for you if you've ever thought about taking a break or drinking less, but fear the social pushback, which is real. This episode is for you if you've ever worried whether your social life will evaporate once you stop drinking. And finally, this episode is for you if you're curious to see what impact an alcohol-free life, or maybe a less alcohol life, would have on you living your great man. Now today, you're going to hear a story from a man who I respect deeply, who made the bold move to give up alcohol altogether, not after hitting his bottom, quite the opposite, after hitting his ceiling and knowing that alcohol was holding him back from his absolute best self. You see, Steve Wilt is one of the premier financial advisors and a senior partner at one of the top financial services firms in the business. Every year, you'll see Steve neck and neck at the top of his firm for most business production. He's got an incredibly loving partnership with his long-term wife, whose relationship continues to flourish with each passing year. He's a devoted and present father to 2 children who he adores. He's a devout man of faith and a pillar of his community, giving back to the community he loves so deeply in Akron, Ohio. Now, Steve is a man who's chosen to go for it all, his absolute great man. And he decided that alcohol was standing in his path to realizing his fullest potential. So in this episode, you're going to learn how and why to consider stop drinking, even when you don't have a problem, how your identity, your self-concept, who you believe yourself to be, plays the biggest role in why you drink and your drinking patterns, how to start your path of reducing or temporarily abstaining or stopping drinking altogether, how to communicate these changes to your social community who's used to seeing you drink, how to handle those social contacts who don't want to see you change. And finally, Steve shares with you a non-Alcoholics Anonymous group resource for men to help you quit alcohol if you desire. Enjoy this episode today on Is Alcohol Keeping You from Your Great Man? Featuring my good friend and great man, Steve Wilt.
Here at the Great Man Within podcast, we love to celebrate firsts, big wins. And today we have a first because we have a guest by the name of Steve Wilt who has short sleeves on. And Brian also has short sleeves on. And this is by far the first time that Dominic has the longest sleeves on of anybody on the podcast. Because for those of you, if you haven't seen Dominic's Instagram or just him in general, he is a tank top dude. And it does not matter if it's June, July, or January. He's a tank top guy.
Listen, there was someone who broke into my apartment, stole all the sleeves on my shirt. What do you want me to do, man? What do you want me to do? Yes, today is the one long sleeve shirt that I think I own.
Are you cold? So, what's going on?
Yeah, so I'm on the 5th day of a 5-day fast, and my body temperature, I actually feel a little bit chillier. So I'm feeling a bit dainty right now, and I need this long sleeve shirt in the middle of summer to warm me up.
Your body is so honed in, and I say this with all the jealousy in the world. Your body is so honed in by not eating just a little bit of a food. Your body temperature, you can feel it. It's amazing.
I can feel that. And speaking of a man who's really honed in on his body these days, Steve, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, Dominic. Man, I'm excited to be here.
Thrilled to have you here, man. This has been a long time coming. We met when, Steve? You want to tell the story?
Yeah, it was 2.5 years ago. You were speaking at our firm event. Right then, I realized there was a connection. You talked a little bit about your sister, and I was am involved in a special needs school, and we connected on that level. And then, man, on the way home, I read your book, your first book. And by the time I landed, I sent you an email saying, "What's next? How do we get together?" You designed a retreat to design the next 10 years of our life. Went out to Colorado, and it's been an incredible 2.5 years.
That's right, man. And, you were from the very jump, just a guy who's like, when he makes a decision, it's done. When Steve reached out and he was like, "What's next?" I read your book. I listened to you on stage. He was the guy that we built that retreat around. When we talked about the mastermind, you're like, "I'm in." And I forgot that you really resonated with the story I told about my sister on your stage, because that was the very first time I ever spoke about my sister publicly. And it was because your firm is like the crown jewel of the financial services business. And I knew I had to bring my A game. And thank goodness that I did, because maybe if I didn't tell that story, something would have been missing in our connection and we never would have had this right now. So feeling grateful.
Yeah, me too. We owe her a lot. I know you do, but yeah, I'm not sure if I would have come up to if you hadn't. So I'm really glad you did.
Thank you, Mary, for just another gift that you bring into my life. But Steve, man, you're here to talk about a really important part of your journey that I know a lot of our listeners have reached out about. So why don't we set the stage about the reason why you chose to give up alcohol? And it's a very different kind of path that you took to get there to that decision, because your life was thriving when you made this choice. So let's hear about that.
Sure, Dominic. Yeah, it was a year ago, May. We started the Great Man Within Mastermind, and we had to have a immersion that was not in person. So we had this virtual immersion, and you put us through the Great Man Within meditation. And I'm down in my basement, which is actually a poker room, in the dark. And you had me so deep into connection with my great man. And at the end of that immersion, you said, "What would your great man say to you right now? What would he say to you to make you your best self?" And my great man said to me, "You'll never be me unless you give up alcohol." And dude, it hit me right between the eyes. But that was a year ago, May. So it took a while to sink in and make the decision.
What did you feel in that moment, Steve? So your great man's telling you not to drink. This is something I assume you did socially. Why? Why did that come up?
When I envisioned him, he was a brighter, stronger, better in shape version of me. When you think about your great man or your best self, for me, I think we all have these things. Like if I did all these things, I want to eat better. I want to work out more. I want to drink, whatever it is. I looked at him and thought, man, that's who I aspire to be. And that's what I think being the great man within is all about, your best self. And I was shocked when he said it. I mean, that was just, it came out. I'm like, man, he's probably right. I mean, that would probably be one of the sentinel moments of my life to make me my best self, is if I did that.
Yeah. And you said that it took you about 7, 8, 9 months for you to actually take action on that. So what was that about?
So shortly after that, last July, I contracted COVID, and it hit me pretty hard. I still have issues with sense of taste and smell. But as I was recovering from that in the fall, I noticed that when I did drink, it hit me much harder. The same 1 or 2 at night or whatever it was, the next day, I just felt worse. And that went on for a while until I did dry January for the 3rd year in a row. And the first 2 years I did dry January, by the end, I just felt better. I felt, hey, that was a good exercise. But this time at the end, I didn't feel that great. And I thought, man, am I getting older? Am I a long hauler, which was my main concern, or is it more? So I started tracking my drinking in February, just on my phone, and how I felt the next day. And actually, I got pretty scared. I thought, this might be a permanent state for me. Maybe I'm just never going to feel the way I think I could feel. So a lot of things added up to one day me deciding I was going to take an extended break from alcohol.
What's really inspiring about your story, Steve, is many times when someone makes a decision to come off of alcohol, it's usually because something catastrophic has happened, or maybe, like their business is being affected, their relationships are being affected. But, one of the cool parts about your story is, your relationship with your spouse has never been better. You're at the top of your game financially and in your business, right? You're constantly number 1 or 2 or 3, like in terms of new business production, financial advisor, your partner in your firm. and you've had some of your best years, like the most recent years. So things were thriving in these areas of your life. And it felt like this decision was not based on something broke. It was based on you had had this new vision for yourself of what your great man could be. And it was more of I'm moving towards something versus moving away from something else. Does that ring true to you?
It really does. Yeah. I didn't hit rock bottom. Nothing happened. There was no big thing that got me over the hump here. It was more, to your point, you said it to me once, Dominic, that I'm kind of moving from some success to significance. I've got a lot to give back in the world. I feel like I can help a lot of nonprofits, mentor a lot of people, do a lot of good. But to do that, I need to be my best self. And to be that guy, there's a lot of things that I want to do. And it's not just alcohol, right? Like I'm eating better. My nutrition is 1,000% better. I'm doing smoothies every day. I'm getting tips from men in our mastermind about what to include, not to include. I'm working out. I just finished our push-up challenge through the Great Man Within, which for me was a big deal to do push-ups, over a 64-day time frame. I've not done a lot of push-ups in my life. Like I'm an athlete, but that was a big deal, right? So it's a lot of things that I've decided to do along with quitting drinking that I feel better than I have in a decade right now.
Steve, it sounds like you made a decision to live a bigger life. You wanted to do more with your life and the impact that you're going to have on the world. And Dominic mentioned the 7-8 months in between where the great man said, "Hey, knock it off, stop drinking," and the action that followed. And I'm curious, what is, like, looking at the other side of it, what did alcohol do for you? Like, what was it? Like, what was the allure?
So, I think I'm not alone here. Being in business, as you start to grow through your 40s and 50s, every time I turn around, I'm in a social setting where there's alcohol. And I mean, literally almost every day. Doesn't matter if I'm golfing or playing tennis or in a business function or with our family, with my college buddies. Like it is just going to dinner with people. So one, it's just kind of an omnipresent thing for, I think, a lot of people, me included. And I know it's incumbent on me to say no, but when it's being handed to you every single day, what do you want? It just starts to add up. I think the other piece of that and what it did for me, Brian, was, when the kids were young at the end of a long day, I'd pour myself a glass of wine or a drink, after they went to bed. And now they're teens and they're kind of out of the house. So yeah, it would just, the first one I think kind of relaxes you, but then, it's whether you stop at that first one for a lot of us, right? Or do you have a second one? And then, how's that impact you if you do, right? How do you feel the next day? And again, with me, I didn't know if it was COVID or age, but I wasn't feeling as good. I wasn't waking up with the same brightness. I wasn't ready to go work out in the morning. It's just a little blurry and I didn't like it.
We all know that feeling of a hangover where it's like that blinding headache. Yeah. That's pretty clear. But what you're talking about is just that a little bit of blurriness, a little bit of dullness going into the next day. And when you're performing or desiring to perform at the level to have the impact that you want in life, like that's not good enough.
No, listen, I don't want to sugarcoat it. I definitely have had some pretty bad hangovers in my day, especially on the weekends. But yeah, that it just didn't feel good to me. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to be brighter. Right now, my senses are even more attuned. It's surprising to me what a difference it's made so far. I'm about 3 months in, maybe.
3 months in. Yeah, you're over 100 days. Didn't you have a 100-day mark the other day?
I did. Yeah.
Congrats, man. That's really exciting. So I don't drink anymore. I probably had like 3 individual beers or glasses of wine over the course of 2021 so far. And I never made a conscious decision to stop drinking. It just kind of faded away. And I think back to the origins of how it started to fade away, because for most of my social life, 20s and 30s, I would drink definitely on Friday and Saturday nights. That was a given. And then most Thursday nights. And then, I was in the same business as you, Steve. So, if there was any other work functions, it was just a given on those where you go out to dinner or happy hour. That's how people get together, that like 4 or 5 nights a week I'm drinking. And the one thing that started me to take one night off of drinking was I started taking this fitness class at the Equinox on Saturday mornings. And I really loved the class. There were a lot of really attractive women there. And it was like really motivating to go because I like to see that every Saturday morning, and I was getting a great workout in. But the nights that I would go out and I'd be out till 2:00 and then I'd have like the late night meal and then I'd get up in the morning, it was just brutal. So I stopped going out on those Friday nights, or I stopped drinking on those Friday nights. And all of a sudden I was like, wow, I feel exceptionally good all day Saturday. which was like, I kind of want to keep this feeling because usually Sunday's just a recovery day. It's me sitting on the couch and ordering meatball parms. And so like having that frame of reference for what it could feel like on a Saturday, having like gotten my workout in and I'm already like achieved more by noon than I would normally have. That was the thing that kind of got the flywheel turning, and slowly it just kind of started to fade away. I know it was different for you. You made like a pretty, I don't know what, dramatic's not the right word, but like, you said, I'm going to stop, and you ended up doing this program. What was that called, Steve?
Yeah. So to your earlier point, Dominic, when I make a decision, I make a decision. Some things led up to it. I did see online this group called I Am a Comeback. I watched this video, the founder, Mark, and it seemed pretty compelling. And then speaking of Mark's, one of the guys in our mastermind, Mark Melvin, posted on Facebook that he'd been alcohol free for 5 years. And it was a culmination of things on this given day that made me say, you know what, I'm going to take 90 days off, see what happens. But then I did join this program. You pay, it's a 6-week program where Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon, you have an hour-long call. And then you also have an additional call with your coach. So it's 4 hours a week. And my calendar's pretty tight, but I carved off those 4 hours a week, just slated them on my calendar so I could join these calls. And then in addition to that, I have a therapist that I've worked with a little bit over the years, and I put a weekly call in the books with him just so I could tackle the social piece of this, right? How do I go out and say to friends, family members, people in the community, what's that going to look like? How are they going to perceive me? And that was a huge concern of mine. And we can come back to that. But, I was putting 5 hours a week into this decision for 6 weeks. One, to make sure it's a decision I wanted to make. Like, is that what I want? And then two, just to get through that 90 days in an easier fashion. And I got the 90 days, and now I'm just going to keep going. I don't know if I'll ever drink again, but it'll be a while if I choose to.
Steve, can we go back to that social piece? Because when I think about drinking, and as you described, these are typically in social environments, except maybe the one wine at home at the end of the day. Talk to us about the pressure or the concern you had around social and drinking.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I had a lot of concerns about it. Again, perception. I've got a great business. I'll do a lot of stuff in the community. I was concerned about how people were going to perceive me from that standpoint. But more, my friends and family members that I've always, partied with, how are they going to feel? And I don't want anybody to feel badly because I've made this decision, right? I'm trying to make sure that they don't. Go on and do what you do, live your life, and just, be happy for me that I'm living mine. So, how you message that, I learned, is kind of important. When I first tell people, hey, I'm just taking an indefinite break, one of the first guys I told was somebody I golf with, and he's like, well, that's no fun. And I said, well, man, it's just something I got to do. He goes, oh, no, I'm happy for you. But, no good story starts with I had 3 lemonades and then. And, this buddy's backing me all the way, of course. But, yeah, and then there's, friends that I've been, all the way back to college that, I don't want them concerned that our relationship's going to change, right? Or that I'm not going to be as much fun, or that I'm not going to be there. If anything, I might see everybody a little bit more because we're just going to have fun. I'm just not going to be, drinking with them when we do.
But didn't I hear, Steve, that your very first poker game without alcohol, you wiped out your poker buddies? And are you invited back at the table anymore after that?
In case they listen to this, I'm not sure I want to go there. But yeah, my first poker game with my buddies, I happened to have a good night. And I'll probably get creamed next time just for saying it out loud. But yeah, I felt like I had a little bit of an advantage.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, we'll get just in case they listen, we'll pivot off that topic, but I knew I had to bring that in there. You decided to start talking to a therapist about like, how do I communicate this? I don't want anyone to feel uneasy or like I'm judging them. It's just like, this is my choice. And so how has that played out in those circles where, they've been used to having drinks with you?
For the most part, it's been absolutely great. I find the people that care about me, that love me, that want the most for me, again, at first there might be a little bit of shock or a little bit of what, or really, but they've all, come through and got my back, and, they can see the difference. I mean, I'm down 18 pounds just to start.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Part of it's that, but part of it's the smoothies and the working out and the nutrition, all those things combined. Gosh, I'm hitting the golf ball 15 yards further off the tee. I'm playing faster tennis. Like, it's all combining. Again, I'm going to be 57 in a month. That stuff feels really good. and things I never thought I'd be able to do again. But then there's a few out there that, don't want to accept the new Steve or want me to continue to party with them.
Yeah, what's that like?
It's a little uncomfortable. Yeah, I was with a friend the other day that, at first is, good for you, but, the more they drank throughout the day, the more times they offered me one. You sure you don't want something? You sure? Come on, Stevie boy, that kind of stuff. And, it just gets a little uncomfortable. I was at another event and someone was like, hey, I bet this looks good. And I said, actually, no, if I were to have something, I'd have a bourbon. And they said, well, just have one. I'm like, well, no, I'm not having one, but if I were, that's what I would have, so there's just some people out there that don't want to accept it. And I love them, we'll get through it, but it's a little uncomfortable at times.
In my book on purpose leadership, I write about there are 3 types of people in your life. And Steve, I said this on the stage, when I was doing the speech at your firm, the 3 types of people in your life. The first type of person relates to the historical version of who you once were. And these are the people who maybe call you by your old nickname, or when they hear that you're not drinking anymore, just want to keep offering you a drink because they like that version of you, right? And oftentimes they're not bad people. Like, it's just that they want that part of you, and they can sometimes feel like a sense of loss or threatened by this new change that you're making. The second type of person in your life relates to the here and now version of you. So these are the people who kind of react to, oh, you're not drinking anymore. That's a surprise. But then, embrace the change once you've shared that with them. But that third type of person relates to the highest version of you. That's a very different caliber of person who sees you beyond who you are present day. They see the end product. They see what you're capable of, they see your great man. I know that the men in the mastermind here, because we've had a chance to witness you over these last 13, 15 months, something like that. Like, we relate to that highest version of you. That's the work that we do as great man. And so when you told us that this is what you were going to do, there was no friction, right? There was no friction. It was actually all celebration. We're like, man, that is amazing. You didn't have to, not only did you not have to explain yourself, but it's like, how can we help support you? If you think about those 3 types of people, historical version, here and now version versus highest version, there's 3 very different energies that you experience when you share your story to those 3 categories.
Dominic, absolutely. And the awesome thing about that is I knew that was going to be the reaction of the mastermind. I knew my 20 brothers in the mastermind were all there to be their best selves. I knew their reaction was going to be positive. I knew you guys were going to have my back. I knew you were going to ask how you could help. And it was the one group that I absolutely knew I could count on. Again, don't get me wrong. I knew I could count on my long-term friends. I knew they'd come around, but I knew immediately the mastermind would say, good for you. How can we assist you? It was really cool.
Steve, part of your journey here over these first 90 days was writing a letter. And that's something that you read for the entire mastermind. And it had the impact on me was not just seeing a great man stepping into himself, but also it was funny and relatable. Because alcohol has been certainly part of my life, still is to a certain extent. And hearing you kind of relive what it used to be to you was great. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what that step was about.
Yeah, sure. So, the I Am a Comeback, again, this group that I joined for this period of time, they had a lot of really cool things that we did. There were daily videos, reflections, journaling. It was pretty immersive. And one of the pieces was, stop lying. I had to catalog throughout the period of time anything that you were lying about when it came to alcohol, right? How did it really deeply impact you, and at what point? Were you ever hungover on a holiday because you were partying on Christmas Eve, right? Were you ever hungover on vacation because you were on vacation, but not maybe being your best self with your kids? There were all kinds of pieces to that. But the final piece of the comeback is you write a goodbye letter to alcohol. Yeah, I took it all the way back to my college days, and we all have some of those stories. So I share some of my college day stories, and then talked a little bit about, how I grew up in the business and really mostly, a sober environment, but then how it started to creep into my life through these social interactions and how it started to show up more and more and more. And I did it in the third person, like I was actually talking to alcohol as a friend, who in the end I acted like it was an enemy, of course. But it was a powerful exercise to go through that, to put it in writing. You're supposed to read it to a video and then burn it, but I chose to do it at the immersion in front of all of you men. And I just felt it was the perfect timing and opportunity for me to do it in front of people I cared about and to make it more impactful for me long term. And it was it was a very emotional moment for me to do it in front of you guys.
It was a really cool moment, man. And you were standing, it was a campfire. It was at night after a long day and a powerful day together. And you read it and then you threw it into the fire. And I remember after, actually, Brian, maybe you could tell this part of the story because you were witness to this, but like, I went up to hug Steve to congratulate him. And then you overheard him say some words directly to me. So like, what was your experience of that?
Well, I witnessed the embrace and it was really cool to see you guys hug and Steve talking into your ear. And I think we told this story on another podcast. And I believe it was something along the lines of, you've changed my life. You're changing lives. I'll do anything to get to 10 million men. This is a path that every man should be on. And it was just beautiful, man. It was and from my perspective, like, man, like, what is brotherhood if it's not that? Like, I got you on our individual journey, on our individual path, and I got you on our group path. And that's amazing.
Yeah. That rocked my world, Steve. That hit me at my core. And, like what you said to me, now there are people in your life who are saying something similar to you, right? Because of the change that you've made. Like, what's been that downstream effect that, as you've made those changes, other people who have been thinking about it have now confided in you?
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. But before we go there, I do want to come back to that moment for a minute. Sure. Because, Dominic, you started this with, I'm very blessed with my relationship with my wife, my family, my business. And when we met, I was just searching for what's the next thing. Really, I thought, how can I be better in business or how can I be better? But the fact that I'm, literally kind of a different man 24 months later, not just alcohol, breath work and journaling and all the things that we learn through your podcast and this mastermind, my mental acuity is just better. I feel better every day. I'm stronger. All those things have come because of my relationship with you. And that was a culmination of that. What I meant at that moment is what I still mean today is you're on a journey to help 10 million men with inner work. And I'm going to be along your side to help you get there. And if this podcast is a little bit of that advocacy, I'm thrilled about it. All right. So we're going to keep this up.
Thank you, man.
So I want you to know that that's a lifelong pact that we have.
Hell yeah, we do.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So, as I do share this with people, I'm finding others saying almost immediately many times, wow, maybe I should do that. Or I've thought about that. Or maybe I should take some time off. It's all about attraction, not promotion. I'm not trying to talk anybody into changing. But if somebody says to me, why you seem different, or I think that would be a good idea for me, and they ask my opinion, I've got 3 or 4 men right now that are seriously considering making changes in their lives because of what they're seeing for me. And that feels good. I'd love to help other people. Again, I don't care I do care, but I'm not promoting that anyone else quits drinking. But if they want to, or if they want to explore taking a little time off, if they want to explore how to become their best person, I want to be there for them.
Steve, a line you mentioned earlier that a friend gave you was, no good story happens after 3 lemonades. Right. And I get that. That resonated with me because I understand that when I think about the stories that I often tell from my past, alcohol is typically involved in some way, shape, or form, different varying degrees, depending on if I'm in Vegas or if I'm somewhere else. I would like to challenge that because those memories, while fun and blurry, they also seem a bit immature. And I'm curious, like for Dominic and for you, who are not drinking right now, do you have good stories? Do you have good memories? Like, is the 3 lemonade theory true?
That 3 lemonade theory is bulletproof. Nah. We're going to pick that thing apart.
So you guys are living now a very boring life. Got it.
Actually, I want to jump in on that real quick. And then Steve, I would love to hear your perspective on it. Because Brian, that's such an awesome challenge. I did this episode not that long ago called, why men must adventure or why men crave adventure. I can't remember exactly what I titled it. And there comes this time in many men's lives where we stop creating new stories and we just regurgitate old ones, from the glory days. It's because many of us haven't learned how to adventure like an adult, like a mature man. And I'm not saying that everyone who drinks is immature. That is not at all what I'm saying at all. But when that's all then that's all that I knew for many years and being in fraternity. And then my early years of, being a professional, alcohol was always dead center of all my adventures. I didn't know any other ways of doing it. So now, I've got great stories about like all the stuff we're doing in the mastermind, like I'm building stuff. We're going on adventures. Actually, next week, tomorrow, I'm leaving for Costa Rica because I'm going down to help a group of military veterans, combat vets with PTSD, go on a week-long excursion with ayahuasca, plant medicine that could potentially help heal some of these wounds that they've been carrying around for years, decades even. That's an adventure. That's a story. Now, it may not be ridiculous, or I, ended up like at the, Grand Central Terminal with my pants down because I had too many drinks, or I'm not going to have those kinds of stories anymore. But I definitely have got cool stories.
Yeah, I would agree. And consider myself a relatively funny guy. I'm sharper throughout the evening when I'm talking to people. I also find myself talking to more people than I used to, engaging in deeper conversations, having a little bit more fun, right? I think that, when I was drinking more, I just wanted to be with my buddies in the corner, kind of BS them. But now I find myself kind of expanding my horizons and talking more. And yeah, I think I still have great stories. I mean, last night I shared a stage with sportscaster Jim Nantz. I got an incredible story about that, right? And, to that point, as I was sitting there before I went up on stage, and it was a nerve-wracking moment. It's been a year and a half since I've done public speaking. There was 250 incredible people in the room. I'm following, some really high-profile people. I thought, maybe I'll have a drink after this. I deserve it. And then I remembered, kind of the words in the comeback. What do you mean you deserve it? If you go to that every time you have a bad day or a good day or accomplish a goal, like every day is a bad day or a good day, right? And that's kind of what it can turn into. But even after I was done, man, I was fired up, all cylinders, thinking, yeah, this is the night I'm going to have. And then I thought, I got tennis at 8 a.m. and then I'm doing a podcast about not drinking. And then I'm playing golf. How do I want to feel tomorrow? I really wanted to feel great today. So I had a non-alcoholic Heineken Zero. That quenched the urge and had a great evening. So yeah, Brian, I think you're right. That is something that could be challenged. And there's a lot of fun to be out there with or without it.
In 2012, a friend of mine was moving from Texas to Washington, D.C., where I was living. She drove up with her brother. Her brother was maybe 10, 15 years older than both of us. I'll never forget. He got there with the U-Haul. He had driven his sister up and was dropping her off. I was helping facilitate the move. And he said, "What are you guys up to tonight?" I said, "Oh, we're going to go to my favorite bar. We're going to have a drink. We're going to get together." And this guy was a party animal. Like, he was legendary on the party scene. And I remember he looked at me and he said, "Just so you know, I don't remember my 30s. He's like, "I've got great stories. I've got a few great stories, but I don't really remember my 30s. He's like, "Take it for whatever it is." But his lesson in this was like, yeah, you may have some stories to tell, but what are you really building? And he told me afterwards, like, he didn't feel fulfilled in those moments. So alcohol has this really like beautiful way of short-term, maybe memory loss, but also long-term making life more numb, harder to feel. And when I hear you guys telling these stories about building things and getting on stage and like really making life, I think that's fulfilling, the fulfilling part of life.
To that point, man, like, one of my new definitions for pleasure is it can't be something that just gives me pleasure in the moment. I also have to factor in all of the downstream effects of something that will happen in the moments or the hours or the days afterwards. So for example, like a Big Mac in the moment would taste really good for me. But when I bring in all of like the downstream effects to my gastrointestinal tract and like my well-being, when I bring that into this moment, it's a net negative, no doubt. And when I think about drinking, for me personally, like, I get really hungover. So if I want to have 4 or 5 good hours, like in a social setting where maybe I'm lubricated, having some laughs, it's going to mess me up for the entire next day. So it's okay, like the 4 or 5 hours of fun now, but I have to exchange a full day of my life for that. That is a net negative. Now I can take those days and create new stories. So I love your question. And I'm going to ask Steve another one. How has this change impacted your relationship with your wife?
As we started, man, I am so blessed. 27 years, just a wonderful relationship with my wife. She is loving the new Steve. She calls me Benjamin Button. And I'm a version like, 3.0. When I found my faith, I became a better man about 12 years ago. And now, she's just can't believe some of the things I'm doing. For example, I'm up before her now. Just every day, I'm just starting my day earlier with more energy. So now I'm getting the coffee. Well, she's been getting me coffee for 26. Now I'm showing up, every morning. I go down, I do some breath work that I learned from Brian. I get the coffee, I bring it up. Thrilled. about 6 weeks in, one day, to your point, Dominic, it was a weekend where normally it may have been a little bit of a recovery day. I'm cleaning the garage. And she's like, what in the world is going on? Right? Like involuntarily just doing it. And it just goes on and on and on. I mean, candidly, I drove home, from a holiday the other day where normally she'd be the designated driver because she's a one glass of wine girl. And I might have had a couple extra with the family. But instead, and that goes for my buddies too. I haven't gotten behind the wheel of a car after having one drink in 20 years. I've just been religious about it. But, we're going golfing Sunday. And I'm like, I'll pick you guys up. And they get a huge kick out of that. All of a sudden, I'm the driver after 20 years of not driving anywhere. But with Holly, it's really been incredible what's happened here. And I just feel like I'm a better husband to her because of this.
That's beautiful, man.
And a better father, too.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything more about that?
Sounds like a lot more productive as well.
And my days are longer. It's more expanded. I've got more energy. Yeah. I mean, I've always, being a father has been a core, piece of my life. And I've always given it my all. But I just think I'm more attuned to everything, more present all the time, So I don't know that they've seen as much of a change as Holly has, but it just feels better from my standpoint. It's better modeling as well for them.
Let's talk a little bit about identity, Steve. I always reference James Clear in Atomic Habits. He says, we want to change our behaviors. We tend to change the wrong thing. And that's why our efforts to change behavior fail. We try to change our behaviors versus changing our identity. Right? Our identity, our self-concept, who we believe ourselves to be, is the single greatest driver of all of our actions and behaviors. So we did a 90-day theme in the mastermind around identity. And I know that you said that had a pretty big impact on becoming the guy who used to be, one of the lives of the party to being the guy who no longer drinks. So what's that identity shift been like for you?
Yeah, that was, kind of coming back to the real conversation around, what this is going to look like. So bringing it all together, James Clear was the speaker at our event last year, right? So I did see him, and I think this all kind of culminated in this decision. But yeah, I was really worried about my identity, and it was right as we were exploring that theme during the mastermind. And if I'm not that guy, then what guy am I? Right? I mean, that was really bothersome to me, and I was even getting some, headaches when I woke up when I started doing this, which I never got during dry January. And again, my therapist thinks it was more stress around my identity than anything. And, they went away, and it wasn't, anything but just, kind of grinding my teeth at night, trying to figure out who am I if I'm going to be this guy. So had a lot of thinking to do there. And again, in the end, it kind of comes back to that first half hour of the night. I'm the same guy. Nobody notices anything differently except me. And I'm a better guy for all the reasons that we've talked about, right? So, but at first, it's a pretty big hurdle and struggle to get through, trying to think through that, what that's going to look like for me in the future. So it took a while.
One of our mentors, and I know the three of us have read some of his material, but Michael Singer, who's written several books, we reference him all the time. He says that we're all out here doing drugs, doing alcohol, because we're not okay inside. Because there's something that's just not okay inside. And we're trying to make it feel better. And I know for me, going to a party, there was some social anxiety. Lord knows I'm not a good dancer, so I thought maybe that would make me a better dancer somehow. As I'm seeing you on the screen here, or when I see you in person, I think I would have had a desire before to be like, I want to have a drink with that guy. And that felt like a connective sort of tissue. And I don't feel that because like when I'm with you, I feel okay, and I feel like we go there. Like what alcohol used to give me to be able to loosen up, to be able to have a deep conversation with someone. Like we've learned the tools over these couple of years here to do that naturally, and man, does it feel so much more connective. So like this idea of, man, I want to have a drink with that guy. I'm reframing that to like actually like I want to know him better, and how do I do that?
Yeah, no, man, it's a great point. And I talked a little bit earlier about being more engaging. I find myself just getting in there a little bit more with people and, looking them right in the eye and not trying to figure them out, but trying to get to know them better, right away and asking them more questions. And I never thought that would be part of this, right? In a social setting, that I would be engaging more with different people in a much deeper way than I used to, because I'm choosing to take an extended break from alcohol, right? I just never thought that would be part of it, but it is, and it's really feels good. So thanks for that, Brian. I agree.
I mean, that's a great point, Brian. And Steve, you have the skill set now to go deep with others. And Brian, I think you bring up such a great point. It's like, I would want to connect with someone. I wouldn't know how. There's these social awkwardnesses. And so the lubrication kind of creates that. The guard's coming down. The skills that we've been learning with doing inner work, it's like, you can do that naturally. And actually it becomes a lot easier without being inebriated. And so like you said, it's kind of like, we've got that bridge now. Steve, the last place I want to take you is, we hit on this concept of how like you got to celebrate this, in front of a group of guys who had witnessed your journey over that entire last, 15 months. And, I've given this analogy a couple of times on the podcast, but I want to give it one more time here. On the day of our immersion in Austin, Texas, the New York Yankees had played a game the night before. Corey Kluber, the pitcher of the Yankees, had just thrown a no-hitter. And I watched how the team goes and celebrates, the pitcher, who in his moment of excellence, they're all there for. And I think about how like being in community where other men have had a chance to witness your struggle over an extended period of time and who have seen you make the tough decision, who have seen you put in the work and then get to see you when you arrive at your moment of excellence and can celebrate you. That's really a different experience than it kind of happening off Broadway, behind the curtain. And you may be getting a few taps on the shoulder, pats on the back, like, hey, nice job, man. It's a very different kind of feeling. I mean, hasn't it been a different kind of feeling for you from what you've shared with me? It has been than just kind of those drive by, hey, good for you.
Yeah, Dom, absolutely. The mastermind, we talk about it, a decent amount on this podcast. We get together every Thursday night. And, last year was a really brutal year for me and for many, right, with COVID. But we faced some really tough challenges in our family and, with my health. And I was probably as down as I've ever been. And to be able to share that with all of the brothers in a confidential setting and to have people get through that and build me up and call me on the side and have my back was incredible. So, kind of coming out the other side of that with some wins and to have everyone celebrating that with me has meant so much. Right? I've gone, from really being at the bottom to being in a great place and to have this group of men around me, to your point, has been invaluable. Wouldn't trade it for the world. And it is different than others that are happy for me. But then I've got some of my good friends that are really happy for me now. So maybe they didn't see the whole journey, but they get it. I got one other thing that I really want to touch here. And, I am by no means an expert here on, alcoholism, a drinking problem, any of these things, right? And, I've got all the respect in the world for AA. It actually was started by Dr. Bob, literally a couple blocks from my house.
Yeah.
I don't know what's right for other men, right? I don't know, if AA is right, if you're hitting rock bottom. I don't know if I'm a comeback is the right fit for you. It happened to work for me. I don't know if just dry January is all you need, or maybe you don't need anything. I don't know, right? But I just want to make sure that I put it out there that, I've got respect for everybody has a little bit of a struggle or a lot of struggle. It's just trying to get better, right? Trying to be their best self. And that's all I'm trying to be. So this path and journey, has worked for me so far. And I'm confident it's going to continue to. But whatever's right for you, man, you got to do.
Wow, what an inspiring conversation with such a tremendous human being in Steve Wilt. You can hear that everything he does comes from such a deep and loving place, and it's motivating. So with that, it is now your call to action to take one thing that you learned from this episode, this conversation about is alcohol keeping you from your great man, and put it into practice right now. Whether it's taking a night off of drinking, whether it's going to the show notes and clicking on the link to the I Am a Comeback group that helps support men getting off of alcohol, that 6-week program that Steve talked about. What is the one action you are going to take? As always, I'm going to invite you to come to the Facebook group and see, maybe there's other men who want to abstain from alcohol for a period of time. Maybe you can propose a challenge and see who wants to go with you. Or just share some insight that you had from this episode in the Facebook group and connect with other men. And that link for the Facebook group is always in the show notes.